she did or told me she was going to send me a text.
Oh, she did.
She's like, tell us, I'll take his out.
We had 15 minutes before the meeting started, and she already texted me, telling me to take my hat off.
It's funny.
Well, at least she keeps track of you because I didn't say it.
She does. You know what, though? Jim hardly ever wears it, and I don't even think about it.
Because they always were different.
Yeah.
I want to become Jewish, like
A young
a yarmulke.
Jim's big thing is he always leaves his phone on, so that it's buzzing. And so, for the record, Ron's on. Mine will probably go off. I'll probably my dad wants it. Everybody's here, right? We're not missing anybody?
Set. All right, good evening. Welcome. We'll go ahead and call to order the January 24th, 2025 Budget Legislative Audit Committee meeting to order. I'm going to go through and do a roll call, which I should have brought with me, but I didn't. Is there anybody who could take notes, by the way?
A second note taken, that would be a no.
Oh, you missed.
Do it after the fact?
All right, may all present. Wofford.
Here.
Yantis.
Here.
Matlock.
Yes.
Morse.
Here.
Grant.
Here.
Pritchard.
Present.
All right, got everybody here. All right, I'll move on to approval of minutes. After search and request, I could not find any minutes from the previous committee to approve. So with that, I will move on to public body comment. Public body comment. Yes, ma'am.
On number 4, to discuss and vote on preferred form for monthly reports of financial status. I have printed off a couple of samples.
I'm sorry, what are you looking at?
Pardon me, I'll come up here.
I know, but the item number 4 is what we're on now, which is public body comment. What is it?
Are we on public body comment?
We are.
Yeah, we are, but what I'm sorry, what?
What I want to talk about is that
9, I think.
is number 9.
Okay,
Are we all confused?
Come on in.
not anymore?
Okay, so 1123 balance report from the treasurer was called Bank Account Balance Reporting by Fund. It had a beginning and ending balance. It was the same for December. January 31st, it was called Bank Account Balance Reporting, and that one shows the banking institutions, all the account numbers, a beginning and ending balance. In February, the end of February, we had a beginning and ending balance. It was called Shelby County, but not balance or anything else. And there were no totals at the end either. I was told if I needed a total to get a calculator and add it myself. The end of April, it was called Shelby County, and we had a beginning and we did not have a beginning and any balance, just a balance. Then our last one in December came looking like this, if you've all looked at it. So those are samples of what I wanted to say is the one I think that we should be getting is the one that looks like this. It says bank account balance reporting, which shows what monies are in each banking facility.
And it's from the software that we pay for. It's from
Yeah,
CLC.
I mean, these two reports were 2023, they were all like this. And then starting January of 24, they start changing.
Are they generated by different users at the bottom?
This is the same, this is the same. That one, it's a secret.
And I just did the front
Okay.
page of each
Yeah, I
one
don't
of
see
them. I
names on
didn't do the
these.
others.
The treasurer did these 2, and I think, oh, sorry, there's 3, but I agree with Carol, we need to decide on 1.
Yeah.
So these are a good reference.
Seems like it needs to be one format. The expenditures and the revenue format has never changed. It looks more like this, you know, where I just think the balance report needs to be the same every month. We need to have a beginning and ending balance every month, and we need a total so we know how much money we have. Otherwise, how do we know?
That's all I have to say.
Thank
else
you.
want to see these?
All right, public body comment? Public body comment? Public body comment. Thank you. On to item number 5, which is review and discuss the CEFS fiscal year 24 audit. So I sent a copy of this out for review, or it was sent by the treasurer for review. Did everybody have a chance to look at it? And if not, before we go into a little bit more detail, is there anything that either I can answer questions on, or I actually have the subject matter expert here this evening to give us a hand as well in, I guess maybe an understanding of the program, what we manage here in the county, and then we can go into some of the findings of this audit. So,
just to clarify, it is a twofold audit. It is auditing Shelby County, and it is auditing CEFS as the operator. So it's kind of twofold. There are a few findings in there for all of us. It was a pretty rough year. IDOT cracked down on a lot of things that have been done the same way for years. So it kind of seems overwhelming when you read it, but most of them are simple adjustments.
yeah, and then it's almost halfway through, it almost repeats itself in the back. So the front is all the paragraphs, the second goes into a graph version, or a summary basically of the findings, just in a different version. So what's in the front similar to what's in the back of the same findings. And I guess a little backstory is Beth got with Ms. Bame and I a few weeks ago, and we sat down to discuss the audit and the findings in the audit, with trying to find a path forward for corrective action on the audit findings, specifically as it relates to the parts that go to the county. In our part of this is Shelby County is responsible for 6 counties, right?
Correct.
6 counties program. And the program was administered by our former emergency management personnel, and there was a vacancy in 2021. And so with that, to try to help facilitate the audit findings, not only for CFS, but also for the county, we're looking towards hiring somebody to manage the program, to bring it back into compliance as a result of the audit findings. So if you have it with you, and if not, I'll kind of go through and summarize some of these items. But if you have it with you, jump to page 6, which begins with compliance observation number 2. Because 1 isn't necessarily, I mean, it is partially part of us, but it goes into the PCOM, which is the program manager for Shelby County. So on compliance observation 2, the condition reads is the PCOM does not sufficiently monitor the operator's service delivery and operating performance. Due to responsibilities as county treasurer, the PCOM lacks the capacity to perform any service monitoring, such as performing site visits to the operator's facility, reviewing service delivery data, reconciling the budget to funds expended over the fiscal year, or tracking the local match. Furthermore, the PCOM was unaware the service provider was controlling and maintaining the public transportation account in a manner that allowed the service provider to access and utilize fund. The remedies then follow is basically says for fiscal year 24 between Shelby County and IDOT, PCOM must remedy the deficiency by abiding by the following terms of that agreement, and then it goes to list 6 separate terms. 120-day time frame to fix this, which we're not going to quite get there, but we'll get there on this. Compliance observation 3, the PCOM has not monitored the operator's vehicle maintenance performance. The sampled preventative maintenance Events were found to be timely only 28.5% of the time, which is far below the minimum standard of 80%. The remedy is the PCOM must initiate process of periodically sampling vehicle maintenance records to ensure the operator is performing on-time events consistent with the preventive maintenance plan. Compliance observation 4, there's a general lack of PCOM oversight of the operator in terms of compliance with the programmatic requirements of Section 5311 program. The PCOM does not review training records nor monitor the operator's compliance with regulatory aspects of service. The PCOM does not perform any site visits to the operator to perform these required functions. Item 6, PCOM has provided no monitoring of the operator's single audits, provides federal guidance and 4 details of several responsibilities that any pass-through entity must exercise to ensure compliance. And then it goes on to list the 4 requirements for the county as far as this role. There are a few more, item 7, item 8, and they all have remedies here. So in our discussion with Beth, the remedy, to get the remedies taken care of, is to put somebody in the PCOM position to run this program. So bring all of the state and federal standards back up to where they need to be to ensure that we're compliant with federal, state. The ADA compliance issues were not necessarily PCOM, were they?
It's programmatic,
Okay.
and typically what happens is we'll do it for the program, then I'll share the template, and the county will adjust it
Okay.
to their needs.
So before I move on to, which would be eventually the next agenda item, as it relates to item 5, which is review and discuss this audit, what questions does anybody have either for me or for Beth while she's here?
So there is no one in this position now?
There is
Who
someone in this position.
Oh, who is in this position now?
The county treasurer has been filling this position
Okay.
since 21.
I would like to make it clear that this is a finding that has been found on several county operators, small demand response operators. Typically the PCOM, we send them our monthly reports, they review our monthly reports, they approve them. It's not that they've not been involved, they've just not been involved to the extent that IDOT wants them involved. So this was not just a finding against Shelby County. It stems from an FTA audit that was conducted on IDOT, and they said that the PCOMs were not doing enough, basically. And with the position of being an accounting treasurer, there's just not enough time to devote to what needs to be done for this. So it needs to be a separate part-time position.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. Thank you.
Yes. Beth was kind enough to provide me, which I just provided one for here, and I provided one for there as well. A template for what this position needs to entail. So all the specifics for this job are into this draft document now. Likely still some edits. I've given Beth a version of it just to make sure I didn't miss anything. It's very possible. But so I want to stop here. Anything else on this audit? Nothing else? Okay. So I'm going to move on then to item 6, which is to discuss and vote establishing the program compliance oversight monitor board. A motion. A motion by Ms. Matlock.
Yes.
Got it.
Second.
And a second?
Yes.
Got a second, Ms. Freya. Okay. Has everybody had a chance to review?
Right.
Okay.
Had a lot of this was in this.
Yeah, yeah, I did send an advance copy for
Okay.
review,
Okay,
so.
yes, I have.
I think as you're reviewing it, a couple of the things to point out, which they're in the early parts of that, is in discussion with Beth is who to house this with. So which department, which committee, who's going to provide the oversight for this. In addition to all of this, Beth gave us a lot of good information about the program itself and actually the requirements to respond. So the buses have to respond in the event of an evacuation. So they've got a requirement that they've called upon for an evacuation in this area. These buses are actually put on the job to make that happen. And in looking through the county, it was decided that it's possible that public safety is the best place to park for oversight purposes. Certainly up for discussion. This is still a draft version of everything. But this is the proposal, that we're able to bring forward going forward. Funding comes through the CEFS funding, so this will be paid for through the CEFS pass-through budget that we receive their funds anyway.
Right, it's all from the 5311 and DOE grant, so.
And the number of hours, the 30 to 40 hours a month was also a recommendation from Beth that they expect that's really what this job would entail. And then the pay being commensurate with, other responsibilities in other communities as well. So. Any questions on this? Any adjustments or amendments to this? Did you want to look at a bigger version? So you're not...
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I read it last night. Where would something like this be housed out here in the courthouse or somewhere else?
Say that again.
Where would we put this individual out? Do we have a plan as far as that
As far as housing, honestly, no, we don't know if we necessarily have a location. Others, I think, according to Beth, have been mostly remote work. There is travel requirements, so it mentioned in the audit is traveling to the sites. So we have the different sites that will be required, of which again, mileage reimbursement and all that will be taken care of. But probably, I think, would you say 2 site visits a year?
I would say, yeah, IDOT doesn't really specify, so I would say no more than 2 a year would be required.
So there'll be some time involved, especially those visits, especially if you look at the counties involved. There'll be a little bit of travel for this position. But Beth has offered, with their folks and their resources to help bring whoever is hired up to speed on this and give them the training, the requirements, and everything that they need to make sure they're effective at the job. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Then as it relates to item 6, which is discuss and vote on establishing the Program Compliance Oversight Monitor, PCOM role. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Item 6 passes. And the intent will be is we will take this through public safety and then it'll go to the full board as well. So that way public safety understands the responsibility there as well. Moving on to item 7, which is discuss and vote on human resources policy. Can I have a motion on item 7, please? Got Austin on motion. We've got Mr. Yantis on the second. Does everybody have a chance to review the HR policy?
I have not.
Proposed. Okay. Anybody else need a copy? There you go. So you will note, page 2, there are a couple things that are highlighted. It's because at the time that I wanted to get this in your hands for review, I did not have answers on some of these items. So I will have a couple of recommended amendments for this.
Tad, has discussion been had with all the department heads about this?
And the discussion was to ensure that they could facilitate taking care of their people. Especially some of the departments being bigger than others.
What's the alternate if, say there's an issue within a department and that person, department head, can't get it resolved? Where does it go from there?
So can you give me an example? Like, are you talking about something like a personnel issue?
Yeah, maybe a personnel issue and maybe that person is not union.
In all honesty, I mean, I think so I do believe all of the, and I'd have to double check, and maybe since Debbie's here, she could confirm a little bit, non-union employees, you still have conduct that in their contract, right? There's still conduct that has to be followed, and it's understood the steps of what conduct can lead to dismissal or other corrective action.
But I don't know if he's, can I speak?
Yes, please.
I don't know if what he's talking about is more like, say an employee had a problem with their department head, with their supervisor. Who would they go to?
Yeah, that's where.
Is that, I
yeah.
think that's that's what I think you were getting at.
Yeah, and
Obviously, if they're a union employee, they're gonna go to their union, and they're gonna resolve it that way. If they're a non-union employee, what avenues do they have to help with a resolution?
Is your state's attorney your resource to go to then?
well, I know we have a whistleblower policy, but I don't know if that's even what's, so I guess just as an example, you may not have had issues in the past, but what would you expect that you would do with a non-union employee if you had those conflicts?
I do speak with my employees, and I do write them up if I've never had to write them up on anything, but I would just keep that information in their file as to what, and I would tell them what the consequences were of those actions.
Again, I guess I would need to know, again, so all of this is very new for all of us, so it's a learning process. And the benefit of having this meeting now is we have, another week and a half to resolve some of these questions for sure, and make additional amendments down the road.
I would guess you'd get a warning at the beginning, and you would be told how, if it happens again, what, it could be dismissal or whatever.
And then, but their employment contract lays that out, correct? I mean, when they are employed, is there?
I'm not sure what
I've
the
got a
union
big question on that one
contract
right
says
there.
about that.
Okay.
So on a non-union employee, do you follow the same guidelines as far as discipline as the union contract?
I follow the union contract.
Which is verbal, written, suspension, and up to termination on the fourth offense?
Right.
Okay. Then my next question
But
is,
do you need to have a separate handbook or something for non-union employees?
The mirrors the union contract.
Right, that's,
That makes sense.
that mirrors, yeah.
then brings me to this question. Why do we have union employees?
Well, you have
I think it's required to have a deputy. Isn't your deputy clerk
that. Yes,
non-union
my deputy is not.
in every office?
Yes.
Why is that? I'm asking.
Does that
I
have
don't
something to do
understand.
with, then if there's a strike, there's someone in the office?
Right.
But I thought our
There's
contract
a clause
said-
right in the contract that says no strike, no lockout.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
that may be an antiquated policy.
Yeah, I'm being told it's state law.
Okay.
Statute.
Is it?
I can't give you chapter and verse, but yeah.
Okay.
And I totally agree on the handbook aspect of things.
Well, that way you have something in writing for your non-union. I know you've got it for your union, and we always follow the union with our non-union, but it's not really in writing
Right.
for non-union.
Yeah, and again, I think that that's a project that, you know, this committee and this board's gonna have to undertake quickly, which is, you know, employee handbooks.
But it should follow the union contract. It shouldn't treat anybody any different.
Yeah, and we're in negotiations now, so, and again, you know, that, I wanna make sure that all this matches with what the union would be expecting as well, and that's why a couple of these things were highlighted, because I had to make sure that I wasn't stepping over.
But Austin, was your question if someone had, a non-union employee had a problem with Debbie and they didn't feel comfortable with the answer or the discussion, they were talking with their department head, was your question, who do they go to next?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I would think logically, it should probably be the state's attorney. And then she would probably confer, because she is a legal representative, to make sure that what's happening is, you know, following the rule, and by then hopefully we'll have a handbook. And then she can, you know, powwow with the department head and see if there's a resolution to be had. I think that makes the most sense at this point.
Yeah, and we do have we have a whistleblower policy that outlines who folks would then run through on that. I believe the sheriff was part of that. I believe that the state's attorney was a part of that as well. But on item 5 specifically, so the language was left in here to make amendments because I wanted to check with some of the department heads as well as the union as far as performance reviews, et cetera. And it's not, I mean, it's just not standard practice. I think most supervisors have conversations with their folks and setting expectations, but there is no hard set annual review that determines performance. So, the language can be left in there that it's recommended supervisors conduct, but
I didn't hear what you said.
I said it's always possible we can leave it in there that it's recommended, you know, that the supervisors have that, but we can't, only we can mandate something that doesn't already, you know, something that doesn't exist. There's no performance, there's no annual requirement to have an annual review. But I think everybody.
Shouldn't you have a review every year, no matter what it is?
And that is
Even
what
though
the
it's-
union does, right?
Even if it's a 10 clear across
No,
the
they don't
board,
do
I
that.
don't know.
Right, and that's the challenge we have in this is, you know, whether it be negotiations, union employees or whatever, I mean, it doesn't exist. And without putting that into, you know, contract. And so I won't disagree that it probably should happen, but I don't know we have the ability to mandate that it happens.
Well, the simple fix for number 5 is it would read supervisors may conduct annual performance reviews to assess employee performance. And then that leaves it up to the supervisor. They don't have to, doesn't say will, doesn't say shall, they may, if they choose to. And that could be as simple as just having a conversation with that employee over a cup of coffee saying, hey, you're doing a great job.
I mean, in bigger organizations, they do this kind of thing. But I don't know what counties typically do. But usually that's tied to the, you know, your hire date or January 1st, they do them all at the same time or whatever. And it's also a good time to assess strengths, weaknesses, additional work responsibilities you've taken on. Gives the employee a chance to say, well, I might be a little weak in that area, but I've also taken over this. And, you know, and gives you an idea where their raise is going, if they're, you know, where their raise is going to be.
But if it is in the contract, is that a problem?
Mm-hmm. It almost needs to mirror what the union does.
And that's why I think, you know, again, and I think some of this right now is it's temporary to give us a pathway to permanent.
Correct.
If that makes sense. You know, this is a pathway to give us something a little bit more permanent. I don't want, you know, long-term, I don't want Debbie to have to own all these additional responsibilities. But there's been requests to make some change as it relates to
They sign it.
the human resources aspect of the way things are running. So I don't necessarily disagree with Austin's recommendation. A one-word change on that sentence could,
Yeah, I think may would be appropriate instead of will. It can always be addressed later.
I'd make a motion that we change will to may and keep the rest the same.
all right, I got a motion from Austin to change in section 5.1, the word will to may. Have a second? A second from Tim. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. And then on 5.2, was there anything on 5.2? It goes in line with 5.1.
It kind of does.
You'd have to do the same thing there, but may in place of will.
Or just take it out completely. Because at this point, if you're not going to have any sort of any
I think you can leave 5.2 exactly the way it says.
just leave it.
It's on the supervisor, right? It's on the supervisor to make that.
They should be given that at the time of employment,
Mhm.
what they're expected.
Yeah, in 5.2, and there's folks here much more union versed than I am, we're not putting a mandate on employees with 5.2.
You're not, you're just saying where you're going to be given the expectations and the goals set forth in your job position.
Yep.
That is perfectly fine.
So I'm putting the onus on Debbie to
Should
let
that
folks
be-
know how they should be working.
Should that be a time of hire or across the board? Because again, they'll be provided clear performance expectations and goals. Well, their job changes.
Yeah, and that's why I don't necessarily know if you want to put a time frame on it.
Yeah, like I don't,
You know, we're in a position right now where there are some position changes taking place. And if we were to put it at, the time of hire or, just once a year, then we would be restricting what that would look like. And so,
I don't think you get any kickback from 5.2 whatsoever.
I think you're right now that I'm ready to go back.
no, and again, I'm gonna make sure that, AFSCME and everybody's okay with this as well. I will make sure that they've had a chance to bless this. Make sure we're not stepping on anything there. The other highlighted area that I had was 7.2. And I'm going to make a motion to amend 7.2 to reflect the Shelby County Clerk will serve as the authorized agent for the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, IMRF, for employees through the county.
Second.
A second from Austin. Any discussion or questions on that? I have sourced this, I have had a discussion with the clerk on this.
You have,
I have.
and she's good with it.
She is. As a result of payroll,
It makes
it's
sense.
a natural function, the two, but I wanted to make sure it wasn't something that I was missing. If you want to entertain yourself at some point, if you go to the IMRF website and you just put in the search bar agent, there's actually a PDF that talks about the requirements and the training, et cetera, of what that agent's responsible for. And they've taken a look, they're okay with that. Any other discussion on 7.2? All right, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, is there anything in here that I've missed, that you think that needs edited? The previous resolution was adopted in 2019. I have copies, actually, I forgot to provide an additional copy here. It's pretty streamlined. It was pretty short, basic. But a lot of the functions on the resolution revolve around payroll and benefits.
yeah, they go together, so.
They do, and in the midst of the change of payroll and benefit time being accounted for, elsewhere, if this is a good time to revisit this policy overall.
So when you deal with this,
No, we are. So that will be replaced by what we're going over now. So that resolution will no longer exist. Ms. Grant was very gracious in her time in creating our new resolution here, which definitely is much more robust. Yes, sir.
3.2, it talks about unethical behavior. Who determines unethical behavior? Is that by statute, or are we thinking about possibly having an ethics committee down the road?
We have an ethics committee, which was sent to me today for review, and it's been a bit since that's been revisited, and so, but we do have an ethics committee, and we have an ethics policy that also probably could use a review. It was written more than 15 years ago, I think, something like that. I'd have to go back and look at it, but it's old. It's old, and then even the appointees, I'm not sure. There's very specific appointees that relates to that as well. Has to be one Republican, one Democrat, and a local attorney appointed to that. So there are some specifics in there, but we do have an ethics policy this would refer back to.
Up here in the whereases, is there something there need to be put in there that says this replaces any previous HR policies?
Might be a Ruth question. See if we have to
I'll
kill
ask
the
her.
old one.
I'll ask her. And then so if you want to make that amendment now, we'll just do it, and I'll ask her. I mean, I don't think we've done it before with other resolutions. There's no reason for us not to put it in here.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we include in this document that this document replaces all previous HR policies.
question. So, we're addressing.
I'll second that motion with the language being, this resolution replaces all previous HR policies.
I'll go with that.
Any questions on that amendment? And this amendment is placed as the last whereas. Okay? All right, all those in favor to that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Amendment passes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I see lots of things. We've got some FMLA in here and payroll stuff, other human resources stuff. Who handles like work comp stuff? That still goes to Jessica? Isn't she our work comp administrator? Isn't that something she?
Department heads of, I mean, on most things, right?
Okay.
The department heads will source where to go next.
Okay.
And so I've had great cooperation from the department heads, and I just keep one to Debbie because she's here, because she's one of the first ones that I called.
I don't have the answers.
But to her point, she may not have the answers, but the other department heads have agreed to help where the gaps are for now. FMLA is a form, and there's a process. It's not very difficult. We've had examples where either forms weren't provided or, there was denials. And again, probably in times it shouldn't happen. So, do you have something, Debbie?
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
Christine, did you mean, say someone was injured and had a work comp claim?
It's just all in that.
Those always do go to Jessica.
Okay.
They always have. Seems like she's getting a lot on her plate.
She is, and we've talked. And she does have a new hire that's versed in
Yes.
payroll and our accounting systems and everything else. And it's a fantastic addition that I think will smooth this out for her. So,
Very good.
stopping short, but I will tell you that she's very encouraged and motivated to take on this assignment and march us forward. So. Any other questions or adjustments to this? No? No? On the horn? No? All right, then, I guess seeing none, item 7, all those in favor of the human resources policy, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Move on to item 8, which is review and discuss the fiscal year 25 budget. I've got a copy here. I've dog-eared a few things that just for me, I was just looking at different departments on where we were year to date. And mind you, this is the one that was sent to us today by Jessica. And so mathematically, we should be a ballpark 16.6% of the budget for the year at this point based on numbers since we're almost 2 months in. And so, at least for me personally, that's how I went through this, was looking at, where's the overall budget for every department at this point. So, I know that going through the budget process in the fall was challenging. Mr. Ross here in the audience would certainly concur to that statement.
Absolutely.
But, and again, I don't think that we're going to get to that point here, but we even agreed at that time that regular ongoing monitoring of the budget was very important. And from my perspective here, there's nothing at this point that stands out as alarming. There's a couple of expenditures, percentage-wise, that are high, and we're only 2 months into the year. And when we pay our insurance premiums out at $300,000, it's going to skew everything. And as time distance goes, right, that percentage will deplete itself. So it will level out. But, I mean, again, I know it's early in the fiscal year, but as expected, our department heads are paying attention to their dollars.
So for us new members, did you guys get an up-to-date budget every month previously, like last year? Because this was really good. This was very helpful to go through the last couple of months.
I think, I don't think we received this part on a regular basis. So, the intent will be to make sure that we receive this update. And again, this committee being lumped together was intentional because there are things we're going to have to do on the legislative side, but from a budget standpoint, to keep our promise that we made to have ongoing monitoring of this, we need to meet monthly. And eventually, we will have some help from Sickage. If we find ourselves, 3 months from now, which puts us almost halfway through the fiscal year, we have some glaring issues, Sickage has offered that assistance as part of what they're helping us with now. So we set aside money through ARPA for budget assistance for them. They can jump in any time with that. I expect that we'll be able to go through the majority of this year just fine. However, come August, I want them jumping right in here feet first because I don't want to go through that again. But I know that Jessica did a great job of trying to encourage those discussions back in August. And that seems like a really good time to me to start having those discussions. That way, it's not fair to the department heads. Like I say, it's not fair to us, but man, that was laborious, to say the least, to get through that process. And so to have some professional help will be very welcomed on this process. So But did anybody have anything in here that was glaring to them?
I've not had a chance to look at that copy.
So you'll see what I did, I dog-eared a couple of the top right pages. And then I did highlight a few of the areas, just the department and then the percentage of where they're at year to date on their budget.
I did look up on the internet, there are some things on timelines on preparing budgets. And they even started earlier than that, they're looking at May.
Well, Ms. Cole was very generous in her time yesterday when she went to UCCI conference, and she brought me a folder. Part of the presentation yesterday was budgeting, and they provided a fantastic timeline of events
Oh, good.
on when we should start stuff. There it is. Mr. Morse has it. But there's a great PowerPoint in there that I'm going to request from UCCI to get it to the board, because it does have a page in the PowerPoint presentation on you should do these things in these months. I mean, it's, somebody figured it out.
Imagine that.
Is the coroner budget probably due because we had Fayette County helping us, so there's incurred expense?
So we weren't paying salary to that, but we were paying, we still incurred the expenses of body bags, et cetera, yeah. And there was, I mean, based on my regular conversations during that time frame, we had a lot of folks pass away. So there was a lot of, it's expensive.
Been busy.
More than was expected,
Yeah.
on average.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the trend is, but it sure
Yeah.
seemed like, I mean, he indicated it seemed busy, so. And there was some pay that needed to go back in arrears for chief deputy, et cetera, that had still served their time in there. So once we were able to get the pay issue resolved, there was pay made out in that time frame. So. I know that one of the expenses on there, I know that we were down to, again, I hate to talk about something like this, but one body bag, right? So there had to be a whole bunch more ordered, which became one of the expenses.
Just a question, more of a, I don't know if it's a question or comment. When we look at these, we need to be aware, and this references last year's budget as well. Just because something is budgeted for, let's say $350,000, you can look back at prior years and see what was budgeted before and what was used. And we have a couple things that have not been used in a couple, 3 years. The one I just saw it on this report. So Highway Department's got $350,000 budgeted for county MFT equipment rental. And I could not go back any farther, but I think it was 3 years I went back. It was never used. So it's important that we make sure that we understand that just because it's budgeted doesn't mean that that's money in the bank that's getting spent. So when you look at being in a surplus or deficit environment and you have something that you're not using and have not across the board used, that's a large amount like that, you get 2 or 3 of those and that money adds up.
Sure.
Because if it hasn't been used for the last 2 or 3 years, A, you have to ask yourself, do we really need that in there? Or in my way of thinking, when it comes to county highway, they've got a lot of great equipment lately, and I can't think of anything that they would need to rent right now because they have the best stuff they have what they need. The only way that, and actually anything that was over 30,000 would have to come in front of the board anyway, correct? They have to be bid out, so we'd have to discuss it and address.
I don't want to say it for fact, but being a rental, I don't know if that would be considered a service.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I can only, again, I'll be happy to talk to Mr. Tappendorf and, the committee for that, but and I can only assume maybe that's a contingency. If something happened in, a project and there's a contingency there that, we needed a crane that we didn't anticipate we needed a crane for.
And shoot, for $350,000, you could probably buy most of a crane.
Oh.
No? Oh my gosh, I'm thinking of the
You would
agreement, it was
be
90,000.
surprised.
But 350,000, that's outrageous.
But
It is.
in that aspect of it,
For some,
sometimes you get into something that's you think's an easy fix, and it's a can of worms.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have, that's something that they're looking at that, unexpected.
Right.
And I mean,
Right.
and it may not happen for 10 years, but 1 year it may happen and it's gone.
You'd be surprised how many $1 million trainings you see in a day.
Oh.
Absolutely.
So anyway, when you go down and you look at some of, for instance, some of the ARPA stuff, you have to be aware that when you look at the budget, there are things that are like budgeted expenses and things that are operational stuff. So we took in all this money from ARPA a couple years ago, but we had ARPA money in this pot over here. And that ARPA money isn't reflected on here
as a revenue.
as a revenue. It doesn't go from the ARPA into this pot. It stays over here off to the side. Now, there's probably 15 different ways to do it, but when you look at the budget, and this budget we were, preparing this fall, we have to remember that 1.6 million that shows as an expense, that money was right here in this pot the whole time. But it doesn't show as a revenue. So when you say, it was said that we were in a deficit environment, that's not exactly true. In fact, it's probably not true. I myself, I'm not an accountant, but there are ways I would keep track of my own personal money to keep that separate. I would have an ARPA account, and everything that was ARPA would come out of here. Whenever I needed to pull from that, I would pull the money over into an ARPA account, put it in there as revenue received in 2021. It would be 1.6 million, and then underneath it would be the expense. 1.6 million, you get a zero. But you can't logically say that 1.6 million we spent before December 31st was an expense that had no revenue already available. It was already in the bank. We had that money. We spent it. We're to zero. So it makes the balances look a little goofy. It looks like you're in a deficit environment, and you're not.
Most of the ARPA spending was done on items that were not budgeted for anyway. So, when it comes to the budget, it really shouldn't reflect on the budget itself. If that
Yeah, I
makes
was gonna
sense.
say, if you can stay, I have a spreadsheet here, if you just stay focused on what is budgeted items, that's where you're gonna see your deficit. And that is, it's simple math. And again, like Christine said, it's not, we haven't already approved to spend it. It's just a budget that we have to be very diligent about to make sure that we're staying within that lane and we're not overspending. One thing I paid special attention to is we have an account, which is the expense not separate budget. There's a lot of stuff in there. And I would encourage all of us on this committee to dig into that to see what things fall into that.
It's a lot.
Because there's a lot. There's
Like
almost $2 million in there. Some of it you really need to dig into because the revenues come in on the other sides, like maybe it's grant money and you have to match it up. I don't know if all of the grant money is guaranteed or not. I'm assuming you're not going to spend it until you actually get that grant money in your hand. But my emphasis on just that is to focus on those budgeted revenues and expenses, and that is really the most important thing I think for us right now. And then to focus on what Jessica's been sending us and to stay have a clear focus on where we're at every month and make sure we're not getting outside of that variance on where we need to be.
Yeah, I agree. And so to the point on ARPA, the biggest impact we'll have in the budget on ARPA was we did set aside money for highway to pay for 50% of the two things that they bought. And then the sheriff, we offset his, one of his vehicles,
Right.
basically.
And
So-
I do think we have, we had budgeted in this expense not separated, there was some audit money in there, so we spent, $90,000 of ARPA money. Maybe that would help relieve some of that budget, not a huge amount, but there are some small things that we have used ARPA money for that will come out of these budget numbers that we'll see shake out at the end of the year.
I will say hopeful, but I wouldn't count on that particular part based on the estimated expense that we might have just
Okay.
on audits this year.
True.
When trying to figure out the best way to obligate funds for ARPA, We looked at what the clerk had set aside this year, knowing that we would likely have 2 audits, in this year.
That's true, 24.
And we just essentially, it was looked at going, it's been budgeted, right? And to make sure we spread ARPA around, we tacked onto it. But there's a good
Okay.
chance we will use,
All of that
Yep.
budgeted plus the ARPA.
and it's
Okay.
gonna be a hefty year when you got,
Periodic.
2 regular audits that have to be accomplished this year. Plus maybe we need to get assistance to wrap up 22. But the one thing I did want to point out, and I've seen an email requesting some clarification, and it stands out because it applies to me, is on page 15, under 028 county board expenditures, it's showing year-to-date, $960 has been paid out in chairman per diem.
No.
No. That has not happened. So I've asked for clarification on where that number came from. So, and then when you look at the membership dues too, we paid our $1,500 for, I believe, UCCI, and Ms. Cole told me yesterday that we will get that and then some back. So, that line ends up leveling out itself. But when it comes to things and looking for me, 64% of the chairman per diem line stood out to me. And then when I actually looked over as to what that line was, I do have questions on where that money was spent.
I got a question for Christine and hey, you guys.
Yeah.
Been doing this. My head's moving too fast. When you guys are going back and looking at some of this stuff, when you ended like 24 to get numbers for fiscal 25, how much of the budgeted money was actually used in 24? I mean, if we budgeted 6 million, did you find an increase in amount of cash that we didn't actually use?
I thought I had it, but I don't.
You get to the right page here.
Should be like an ending balance.
So,
I didn't print it off. It should say like what was budgeted and what was actually used.
I had that when I was looking over it last night.
Now I've got the revenue one.
Okay.
Revenue one's page 5.
Well, the one that was, what was emailed to us, if you look on page 6. If you look up there at the 2024 current year to date, so $6.8 million was the revenue. And if you look at the very last page, page 22, in 2024, current year to date, we spent 6.4. So that's a big difference. Well, not a big difference, that's $400,000 worth of difference there that we come in underneath what the revenue was. So we were $400,000 pretty good.
2024.
And that doesn't include grant dollars. It doesn't
It's-
include,
I think it does.
does it? See, I can't hardly see it. I should have brought my laptop.
What's the last page on that? Like 90.
89. 89.
Oh, this is the whole report. That is the whole report of that one.
So if this, So if I'm reading that correctly, it shows our revenues were over and our expenditures were under.
Mhm. So that's what to date, year to date. There's your year to date.
Also for 24, it's 500,000,
What page is that on?
6.
I don't think I have the right thing.
Now, this is, if you're looking for 2024, here's the 2024 budget, the whole thing, all 90 pages of it that we got.
So the revenue total, so this is 2024 summed up. Revenue was budgeted at $18,301,831. Received was $19,172,968. So 104 plus percent with an $871,000 surplus over that. And then
For 2020.
that's 2024. So that is the year end for fiscal 24. Expenditures were budgeted for 23.6 million, and it was spent at just a smidge under 20 million. So 84% of the forecasted expenditures were made, putting us at a surplus of 3.6 million that we didn't spend overall. So $5.3 million difference overall. And this is page 89 of the other.
There's the title of it. It was, Jessica gave it to us in an email somewhere.
So that is from period 12/1 of 23 to 11/30 of 24. So that's the entire fiscal year. The supporting pages are here if you'd like to go through it all, 88.
You can have it. I've looked at it
Well,
all.
if she sent an email, I've got it, I just haven't had a chance to look at some of it.
All 90 pages is a lot.
Yeah.
It is. But every little piece of that makes a difference in
It
what
does.
environment we're in. Because if you, for instance, if there's a grant that you added in, if there's a grant you show spending, but you forgot to add it in on the revenue side because you didn't receive it yet, you can't say we spent it here when you didn't already get it here. There's no money in this end. So you can't write this down as an expense. If you have no money, it makes it look like you're in deficit. So you've got to track one against the other. And the easiest way to do it is just go one at a time, one department at a time, and say, did we already have that money? And then we spent it. That's a zero. Did we get this money? Did we spend it? That's a zero. It makes a big difference in the end result.
Because there was like this one, in the 2025 budget, we have 96,000 in this opioid, which we just gave some of that money to Heather. So we have the whole 96,000 budgeted, but in the revenue side of it, we only had 25,000 coming in. But I think we already had $50,000 of it banked up. So it looks like, you have to take that into consideration that we already had the 50,
Right.
we got the 25, but we're budgeting the whole 96 this year. So you just have to
Well,
look at each
Accounting.
one.
You gotta do accounting, which,
that's just like that 350,000 that the highway department has.
Yes.
Yes, in that MFT account they have that money to use. We're budgeting it, but that doesn't mean we're gonna spend it.
Exactly.
That's what
So,
Well, I think it's the same thing when we made amendments, and I'll just use the one, because it's a small example, but it's an example. When we took the fundraising funds from rescue, and we put them over so they were available to be used this year, provided they wanted to use them. If we don't move them over into that category, right?
Then they don't have access.
That's correct. So, it doesn't mean they're gonna get used, but they're there.
You have to.
For budget purposes, so.
if it's not budgeted, it can't be spent.
Right.
I don't know, like I said, I would just focus on your budget, expenses and revenues, and that's helped me learn a lot about comparing that to like what Jessica sent out on where we're at the end of each month.
Yeah, especially when we have to digest 90 pages.
Right.
It's a lot. So, but at this point, I didn't see anything in here that's glaring that, that we're on a trend to overspend.
just that insurance payment, but that's just part of it.
Yeah, and I think that the impact of that is a declining impact because we knew that was going to happen, but as a percentage of the spending so far year to date, It's a big chunk.
Yeah.
Well, and our insurance was up almost $300,000 from last year's budget, and I'm not disputing that. I'm sure it probably is. So that's something that we need to keep our eye on, because if that gets way out of control.
Also on the review list for the year, on trying to find ways to control expenses. Anything else on 25's budget?
It's too soon to really tell what's going on.
Right.
It is, yeah, I'd say 16.6% roughly is what the benchmark would be at this point, since we got through most of this month, and everything looked to be for the most part in line or below trend at this point. So, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to circle back on something. Mr. Chairman, you made mention to some numbers. I wasn't able to get them written down, but from what you've researched and what you've read, we in fact did get more money than was projected for 2024. And we in fact did spend less than we expected for 2024.
This is the budget information, so I'm not sure that we got.
The very back page it's a summary of the year of all the departments for the county.
So this was for the treasurer's
If you don't want to
department.
get the
So if you
pages.
go through it all, it kind of summarizes the whole thing, so that's.
Thank you.
You're
Well, myself is interested in this. There's some folks online that were also interested in this, that sort of what we said was likely to happen, and it did.
24.
Right. I just wanted that for the record. But yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, thank you, sir. I
Yeah,
appreciate you recognizing me.
yeah, no, I know you were very involved in that
Yeah, thank you.
2-month process, and but again, that's why we're here. We're here to keep an eye on that, make sure that the trends stay in the right direction, and if not, then we have questions and we'll get answers. So, all right, if there's nothing else, then we'll move on to item 9, which is discuss and vote on the preferred form of monthly report of financial status from the treasurer according to 55 ILCS 5-3-10,005.2. Have a motion.
Yes.
Motion and a second. Mr. Morrison, a second. Oh, sorry, Mr.
No, you're fine.
So,
That's why I like
I've heard requests for bank balances,
You want a list?
and then on the balance report for beginning and ending balances.
Yeah, and I want all accounts. I think that's expected, all accounts. I'm not really worried about the petty cash stuff. That'll show up on some of these, but that's not a big deal. CDs. I don't know what report. These all kind of give you the similar, like one of them's by fund, one of them's just bank balance reporting. I would say if it were mine, I'd probably do it by bank. But it's half dozen with six of another. You can do it by fund, which makes it easier from 00 to 11 and go up, or you can do it by bank. I could go either way on that one, really. But CDs. I want someone that's not an accountant to be able to sit down and go, okay, so you've got 45 savings accounts. They're paying this. And this is what the balances are. And you've got so many checking accounts, and they're paying this, and these are the balances. These are the CDs we have invested. I don't want there to be any question that an average person could walk in and look at what I have as a taxpayer and not understand where they're at. This bank has these. This bank has these. We're earning this much this month. We have, there's 2 CDs that could, we could roll over and get a better interest rate on. I want all of it. I don't know what report it would be called, because I'm assuming there's a template. Like this one goes by fund, and it starts out payroll and then state clearing, and it has a balance, beginning and the ending balance, so that's important. This one has balance as of 1/31, 2/29, 1/11/30. It needs to have a beginning and an ending balance, and it needs to have a total. I'm rest assured that there is a total. This one looks to be from Excel. It might have been copied over from CIC, but it goes by department, like county health. These are the interest rates. This is what the accounts are. And this is the total for that department. But when you do it that way, you also should have a grand total at the bottom. For, if it's $22 million, I want to see $22 million at the bottom. If there's interest that's pending, I want to see the interest that's pending, because the way you handle a CD can be done several ways, but there is interest building on some of these that we don't have in our hands yet that we have to account for. Because if you invest a bunch of money at 5%, if you can get 5% now, that is a nice chunk that when you have an expense coming up in July and these mature in June, you've got some money that goes back into the general fund in the form of interest that you can use to, you know, say, hey, we're going to have this money come out. We could do that in July. Let's plan that for July.
So let me make sure I understand what you're asking. Are you asking to forecast interest before received?
No, it's not really a forecast. It would be nice to see, I don't see it on here. Like you see what the general fund number, or sorry, what, like this, I'm looking at the general fund CD. And I don't know if this number, this 1.332, 1.3 million. So, I did not look. So it could be that this is currently worth 1.3 million. But that could also be the initial invested amount. Because if it's a 12-month CD, you're going to accrue some interest, but you're not going to get it until it matures. So however we decide to do it, we need to know what it's worth and maybe what the interest is in the whole that we're, like at maturity, what the expected mature amount is. But I'm not sure what the report looks like that's on.
So I think that is likely reflected in, I mean, it should be reflected in the revenue side of our budget.
Yeah.
You know, so if we have something that's at 4% for 1 million, right, we should be estimating we have $40,000 coming due.
You know, like an anticipated revenue.
This year, but I think
does.
I think it would be incredibly difficult to take a $1.3 million CD at whatever the rate is and adjust that monthly, because the challenge we would have is if that were to be cashed early,
You don't get it.
then we're not going to get
Right.
it. And so,
Yeah.
you know, but I think it's fair, right? So here's the item, here's the amount of the CD, here's the interest rate, here's the maturity date.
Yeah, and that, like I said, I don't, this is a report that seems to be pretty common.
That should be reflected in the bank statements anyway.
Yeah.
It should be
Yeah.
just on the bottom of it, right?
Right, yeah, it
Well,
shows.
I would assume every certificate holding should show you principal, rate, maturity.
Yes.
And I don't know actually if that's not something that the bank can give us as a printout, because I mean, if you call the bank, they've got all sorts of stuff that get printed and it might show CDs
But
when
we're
you
not
bought
authorized agents to the bank. So
Yeah.
we do have, and I'll read, so I referenced in the agenda, this portion of the 55 ILCS, which says monthly report of financial status. The treasurer shall file a monthly report with the county clerk and chairman of the county board summarizing the financial status of his office in such form as shall be determined by the county board. So if we have reporting, right, so this is our time to make the request of this is how we would like to see the finances, to give us the ability to make decisions, right? So if we have information gaps, you know, if we don't have starting balances, ending balances, you know, it's hard to know what was spent in a particular fund. You know, if we're wanting to know financial status as it relates to, you know, what we have invested and what the rates are, so we can, you know, have a rough idea of what the interest predictability is going to be for the year, if that's fair, but we need to summarize that and deliver that as an expectation to be delivered to the board. But we also can't make requests that can't be fulfilled.
Right.
Which is why I bring back, like say, to take a $1.3 million CD and try to forecast that out,
Right.
probably, you know, we probably shouldn't ask for that. But bank statements, right, or whatever it is that you're looking at there that
Yeah, this
shows
is
the
just
assets
this is what
plus and what their fixed rate is fine. But we need to define what that looks like to present it to the board to make that request. So far I've got bank balances with rates.
Totals.
I've got a balance, I'm sorry, what was that?
Totals per fund would be nice.
Yeah,
So
so I've
like-
got a balance report with a beginning and ending balance on all accounts, and then I've also got CDs.
Okay. And then this one is divided up by fund, fund 001, 002. Each fund is totaled, and a total for all funds at the bottom. That's realistic. I don't know where this comes from, but I want it from CIC. I think it's important that these things come from CIC because we don't know that our software is doing its job for us until we see it out of that account. I mean, that's what we pay for. And if we're having problems, we need to know about that because we can always contact the vendor and say, hey, we need a report that does this. A lot of times they'll say, well, it's in there. It's in here and here and here. Well, we need
that
to
would be
know.
Are these balances from other departments?
They're from
They're
all
other
sorts
checking
of
accounts?
stuff.
Yeah, that would be what you're asking for is a summary and a detail for each one of these funds.
Like,
That's what they,
I just don't
that's
know
what
what-
they call it, is a summary and a
Is
detail.
that the title of that?
It's not the,
this is the one that looks like an Excel spreadsheet.
I wish I had brought one with me.
I don't care for this form necessarily. I think our software does this, and I want to know if we have to contact the vendor and ask them about it. We need to do that.
Are you wondering where funds are held on that as well?
Yeah, that's a question. Like this one doesn't show where the funds are at. It shows interest rates. It's got petty cash. It does have CDs, savings. This is only one page.
There's not a description.
No, it's just got the fund number and the.
Christine, or Tad, can I speak? I think the one that says bank account balance reporting, that's the one that has, it'll say First Fed, and then it'll have the.
Here's one.
Yeah,
This one.
I can't read it from there.
Yeah, this one
That's
says
the
First
Bank
Fed.
account balance reporting, that's
Yeah.
the one that lists all the banks, so it lists all the accounts that were in First Fed, all the accounts that were in the state bank, and at the very end, the collector funds were also on there.
Collector funds, yeah.
And those funds are in different banks,
Right.
Mowequa, Pana, because those are, I guess, tax dollars that go into those collector funds, collecting the taxes, and then those are dispersed. But it used to be at the end of that report, and then everything was total. So I guess all those taxes were on there too.
Yeah, so collector
I
funds
don't
have
know
to
if
be
that's
in there.
important, but it did total it all.
Is there anything saying that we can't find out from whomever is the CIC guru, and maybe this new hire will know more? I just feel like there's probably a report that does all that, but I don't know what it's called. And it probably would be either by fund or by bank, and I don't either have their purpose. If I was doing something, probably I'd want it by bank, but someone else might want it another way. I think there's probably a report that summarizes it as we want, but I don't know what it's called. So I don't know whether to have
Is there a
someone
general
else-
ledger account for each checking account and savings account?
Here, look at, that's one that's Excel. These are the ones we've been getting. Look at these.
Would it be beneficial if we,
This is December's report that we got, that I kind of,
would there be benefit into maybe taking another few weeks, month, to find out what CIC can actually do?
Yeah, maybe
present
she
and-
could just give us some samples of different formats and then we
Yeah.
could make a decision on what.
Yeah, it's
works
kind of hard to
best.
ask for something that we don't even know at this point
Right.
what to ask for.
And it might be a combination of two reports that we haven't seen yet, but, I mean, there's usually so many choices, you're not even sure where to start. But if we give an idea of what we're looking for, to make everybody's job easier.
Well, so I guess that would be my ask, right? So we can always come back to this next month.
Yes.
Is that if you have preferences, work on what those look like, and then maybe figure out what else, see if we can find out what CIC can offer, and then if there's a particular report name that would be involved, that would maybe encompass the majority of what it is that we're asking to simplify the reporting, right? So rather than 2 or 3 particular reports that end up being 70 or 80 pages long,
Right.
is it possible where it's consolidated into one run sheet, right? So you select the options. I want all this data into one document, and it ends up being 15 pages instead of
Right.
70 through different documents. Again, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
I'm not familiar with CIC. I'm not familiar what capabilities exist.
I'm sure they can roll it up into an asset account, all of your checking accounts, and
I would
have
think.
more detail.
I mean, even if we just had something like this for the time being, that's one of these, whichever, doesn't pick one. Just beginning and ending balances would be nice, and on all accounts. That'd be a good start.
But I think there might be some benefit in, giving ourselves another month to actually come up with some specs and then figuring out, with the treasurer in our office on what actually can be generated out of CIC to help us, have just a better read on this process. So I guess with that, is there any other discussion on this? No? So with that, then I'll make a motion to table item 9. In a second.
Second.
All those in favor of the table, say aye.
Aye.
All right, move on to item 10, any old business. It's kind of hard considering all the new faces to have a lot of old business here. Any new business? Yes, sir.
We were talking about timelines. It'd be nice if we had a timeline of what the board is required by statute to do. We got in trouble because we didn't know about setting the coroner salary. It would be nice if there was something out there to try to get that would tell us what we need to have done at a certain time of year.
Yeah, we've asked for that. Matter of fact, Mr. Ross and I we specifically spoke to that, is asking the organizations that we have memberships to, IACBM, UCCI, if they have such calendar, right? Especially when it comes to election years, non-election years.
Yeah, it should be a
Is there,
timeline
is,
over 4
is there,
years.
yes, and so, it's on my to-do list of things to ask those organizations. But if you know anybody in other communities that maybe they made one internally.
I have a packet coming from another county that I'm going to bring to you that I would like to see the legislative committee work on presenting creating a packet to present to new board members, because to his point, there's just so much. I was actually hoping that information you had is it not more encompassing than just the budgetary stuff?
I think that topic was just budget.
That's just budget.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, there were still like 8.
It's helpful, but yeah.
But I want to say there were still like 8 dates in there that you should consider in budgeting.
Really?
Yes, it was pretty robust. So,
I don't know.
but no, thank you for that, because that's the stuff that's going to get us.
As soon as I
Not
can get that,
Yes.
I'll get it to you guys.
Because it's not just, it's any elected position. It's setting that compensation in the year of election, right? So here we are, 14 months from now, 15 months from now, we've got to set compensation for Debbie and
Yep.
Jessica and everybody else, those timeframes, because we don't miss those timelines. So you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And it sounds like you've got something coming that can help us
Yes.
modify that. So whatever we can do to tack onto that and figure out our gaps. Yeah.
Well, we gotta try to make it easier.
Yeah, so we don't run into the situation, that we ran into. So I agree. So thank you for that. Anything else on our new business? All right. Seeing none. Is anything good in the order from anyone? Mr. Gregg?
Mr. Mayhall, before you adjourn, I just want to make sure that you clarified, you called this meeting January the 24th when you started. And
Yep, you're right.
I didn't want some nitpicker to scrap the last hour.
Yeah, let me correct that, then go back to this is January 28th. The date of my document, on the other hand, is January 24th. So, yeah, thank
You're
you.
fired, that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure I'll make a headline. It happens a lot. I do tend to misspeak, and I'll be the first person to tell you that I make mistakes on a regular basis, and they are simply that,
Has to do it all.
mistakes. So, but thanks for letting me know that I did announce the wrong date, but it is in fact January 28th. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn the January 28th, 2025 meeting. Mr. Gansas, second by Ms. Matlock. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.
Did you need these back?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Nope.
You can go.